Welcome to the February 27th, 2025 regular meeting of San Diego Community Power Board of Directors. I am Paloma Aguirre, Chair of the Board of representing the City of Imperial Beach. We welcome members of the public, community power staff, and board members joining us today at the Port of San Diego Administration Building. This is to call the meeting to order. And Mari, could you please call the roll?
Director Hugo Rivera. Director Insunza.
I'm here.
Director San Antonio.
Present.
Director Suzuki. Director Yamani.
Here.
Vice Chair Lassen-Reimer. Chair Aguirre.
Here.
We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Please stand and face the flag. Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Next up on the agenda is the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the land of the original inhabitants of the greater San Diego region. A land acknowledgement is a critical step toward working with Native communities to create meaningful partnerships and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and homelands. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that were the traditional lands of the community. Thank you. Next, we're going to move on to special presentations and introductions. We are going to now introduce new community power staff. Karen Lai, Senior Counsel, Stephen Yai, Associate Director of Data Analytics and IT, and Janine Kamara, Director of Portfolio Management. Please come forward if you're here and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Lai. I'm the new Senior Counsel with Community Power. I'm based in Oakland. As for my background, I've worked in renewable energy for over 15 years, primarily in-house for renewable solar and battery storage developers. And starting in 2021, started working with Community Power as counsel from Keys and Fox. So I'm super excited to be part of the organization now. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, esteemed executive team members, and esteemed colleagues. My name is Stephen Lee. I am the new Associate Director for IT and Data Analytics. I have over 20 years experience in IT, mostly in public sector, public education, both in New York State and in California, focusing on IT services, technology services, and cybersecurity. Most recently, I've had experience working with a transit agency with North County Transit as their Deputy Chief of IT before joining Community Power. My passion is IT and technology and cybersecurity. I'm excited to move the agency forward as the vision and goal is to have a world-class leading IT and data analytics. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, Board of Directors. I'm Janine Kamara, the new Director of Portfolio Management. I'm a Southern California native. I first came to San Diego and attended UCSD. Shortly after that, I started working and transacting in Western electric markets at Shell Energy North America. Though I've spent the last 15 years of my career working for Riverside Public Utilities, most recently holding the position of Power Resources Manager for Market Operations. I have experience transacting in markets, trading, resource adequacy, renewable energy credits, and I'm really thrilled to be able to do the work that I love now for the community of San Diego. Yes, so I'm thrilled to be back here to support the very impressive Power Services team and to help SDCP, achieve all their clean and renewable energy goals. So, thank you.
Welcome. All right, thank you for that introduction. Next, we're going to introduce two new board members. I would like to welcome newly appointed board members Marco San Antonio from the city of Encinitas. Would like to say a few remarks?
Sure. My name is Marco San Antonio. I come from Encinitas. I was previously on the board of directors for Olevenheim Municipal Water, and now I've just been appointed to a city council member at City of Encinitas as well. I've lived in Encinitas my whole life, well, pretty much since first grade, so consider myself a native. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. Welcome. And we will welcome, even though he's still not here, Councilmember Shanilo Rivera from the city of San Diego. All right. Next, we're going to move on to items to be added, withdrawn, or reordered on the agenda. Are there any that the board members would like to move? All right. Seeing none. Then we're going to move on to public comment. I want to note that written public comments were submitted before the board meeting and were emailed to all directors prior to the meeting started and are posted online. Now, Mari, do we have any public comment?
We don't have any, Madam Chair.
Great. Then we'll move on to the consent calendar. We will now move items number 1 through 9. Are there any board members that would like to remove any consent calendar items? Seeing none. Do we have any public comment on consent?
We don't, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any board members that would like to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Hey, Mari, could you please call the roll?
Through the chair.
There's been a motion and a second. Thank you, Director Yamani.
Director Insunza,
Yes. Yes.
Director San Antonio,
Aye.
Director Suzuki,
Aye.
Director Yamani,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Aye. That motion passes. Next, we're going to move on to item number 10, Community Advisory Committee Quarterly Report. I will turn it over now to Matthew Vasilakis, Community Advisory Committee Chair, to present the report.
Thank
Matthew,
you.
welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Chair Aguirre and Community Power Board of Directors. My name is Matthew Vasilakis. I am Chair of the Community Advisory Committee and a representative from the City of San Diego. It is a pleasure to meet our new directors. On behalf of the Community Advisory Committee, I offer a warm welcome and our support. For context, the board established the Community Advisory Committee composed of community members to advise the Board of Directors and provide a venue for ongoing citizen support and engagement on community power strategic direction, goals, and programs. Committee members are representatives of the represent the diversity of community power 7 jurisdictions with 2 seats per member agency. CAC activities are guided by several board-approved documents, including a scope of work, policies and procedures, and an annual work plan. This work is directly supported by Xiomales Crespo, Community Power's Senior Community Engagement Manager. At the direction of the board, the CAC provides monthly updates on board agenda packets, typically as part of the consent agenda, and quarterly reports during regular meetings, such as this one right now. At the October board meeting, I presented a summary of CAC July 2024 through September 2024 activities. This report summarizes October 2024 through January 2025. You will next receive a full report later this spring. Moving on to general meeting activities, over the past few months, the CAC has continued to assist community power staff and board directors in the development and implementation of key initiatives, while ensuring equity is integral in all items and tasks brought before this board. At the request of the CAC and to commemorate Community Power's 5-year anniversary, members began this reporting period by receiving a presentation on 5 key organizational highlights. The CAC also received presentations on customer operations, metrics, and data tracking, specifically as it relates to the power-based service level and how community powers presented in customer bills, solar battery savings, in which members we were very pleased to know that customers were being re-enrolled into Community Power's program as part of the initiative, flex load strategy, in which the CAC provided feedback on how to translate technical aspects of upcoming pilots. It's very critical. Community Power's strategic planning process overview, in which members recommended that the staff account for a changing regulatory environment, particularly at the federal level. Strategic partnerships, in which members discussed relationship building with local chambers of commerce and local sports franchises, and the 2025 projected rate changes. Thank you for the decrease in rates. Members also voted to recommend that the board approve an allocation from the Pacific Gas and Electric GH3 free attributes from the Diablo Canyon Nuclear Facility. There was a very robust discussion in which members stressed the importance of transparency about the content of the power ratepayers are receiving while advocating for energy affordability, which is very critical right now. And the 2025 CAC work plan, for which the CAC created an ad hoc committee of volunteers to draft, in which the board approved at the board meeting in January. Thank you. The CAC has also continued receiving monthly reports and quarterly presentations on legislative and regulatory activities to remain informed on key issues and quickly mobilize advocacy if needed to support the organization. Community Power staff also continue to provide monthly updates on marketing, communications, and local government affairs, customer operations, and programs. The CAC has an opportunity to receive briefings from staff on all agenda items prior to regular meetings. Thank you so much, CO. In which they ask, we can ask questions and just provide helpful feedback. Related to training, the CAC received ad hoc training on educational opportunities to assist in achieving Community Power's mission, vision, and values and goals. Over the past year, we've received a number of trainings, including orientation training for new members, communications and messaging workshops, strategic plan updates, in which we've received an opportunity to connect directly with Community Power's leadership as they work to create goals for the next several years, conflict of interest and ethical conduct policy, ethics trainings and compliance, Ralph M. Brown Act openings or open meeting trainings, and an overall overview of Community Power programs, in addition to the solar battery savings contractor training, which is an amazing program itself. And finally, a note on vacancies. So we have a couple. They are in the cities of Chula Vista, which has been open since March 2024, and one in the city of La Mesa, which has been open since December, but I expect is being filled next month. So thank you. Upcoming vacancies for this fiscal year, June, July, Encinitas. So we'll want to work with our director there. And then we'll have upcoming vacancies next year for the city of San Diego, La Mesa, Encinitas, and National City. Longer runway. Looking ahead, while the CAC did not meet in February due to a lack of agenda items, our next regularly scheduled meeting is on March 13th, and our committee members continue to be engaged in the work by attending community events with Community Power. I'm looking forward to continuing to lead the CAC for my second term as chair, which ends in July. And this concludes the quarterly report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your leadership and reports. We're going to go first to public comment if there's any.
None, Madam Chair.
Seeing none. Okay. Do the board members have any comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you for having those hard discussions too. I know that robust discussions were had at around the Diablo Canyon item, and we rely on you all to be vigilant so that we can make the best informed decisions possible as a board. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Very appreciated. Thank you, directors.
You take care. All right, we're going to move on to item number 11, presentation on clean energy prepayment financing. Dr. Eric Washington, our Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, will introduce the item and turn it over to Mike Beranger from EFM Financial Advisors, who is joining us online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, directors, and welcome to the Board of Directors for all of our new members. Joining me online to present this item is Mike Berwanger. So prepaid financing is just a mechanism or a lever, said differently, that we're able to lean into to generate savings on our energy costs through long-term prepayment of portions of our energy portfolio. We did have a transaction. We closed our first transaction back in November of 2024, where we were able to yield some savings. I won't steal your thunder, Mr. Berwanger. I'll let you present that item. So with that, I will hand it off to you. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Good evening, everybody. So um, hopefully you can hear me okay. We could just jump right on to the first slide. Um, as was mentioned, the goal of this transaction is to reduce the cost of the existing power purchase agreements that you've already negotiated. And the way that we do that is by leveraging your ability to borrow on a tax-exempt basis to procure a long-term supply of energy. I think it's really important to understand that the background here, the financial technology goes back decades. It's been used for over 100 transactions now, all throughout the Southeast. It was predominantly done for natural gas to the home. If you think about places like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, where they have a lot of gas distribution utilities. It wasn't until about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that the same allowance that allowed for natural gas also applies to energy. The CCA community led the charge in figuring out how to apply the prepay financial technology to PPA transactions. So since that's been figured out, there's now been 18 transactions that have been done for almost $18 billion by 10 community choice aggregators in the state of California. You can see them listed there, yourselves included. We can flip to the next slide. Dr. Washington alluded to this. You very successfully did do your first transaction in November of last year. This was a 30-year transaction with an initial period through November of 2032, where 4 million megawatt hours were assigned into the transaction. Notably, this resulted in projected cash flow savings of over $50 million on previously negotiated PPAs. Translated into sort of dollars you spend every year, that's $6.8 million that you're spending less on a projected basis through 2032 on those contracts. And that was about 12% savings. Very successful and very much aligned with the other transactions that have been done, which if you flip to the next slide, you'll see these are all of the transactions that have been completed by the CCA community since 2021, when this was sort of first done. What's notable here is I think I'm losing track, but I think we're now up to over $75 million annually in savings across the spectrum of all these deals totaled, and approaching $100 million in cost savings. And as you can see, you had good company last year, both San Jose, the CPA program up in Los Angeles, Sonoma Clean Power, and CPA again, all did transactions around the same time that San Diego did. And everybody experienced at least 12% savings or more. And then just on the next slide, just in California, though, it's worth mentioning that, municipal utilities have also taken advantage of this. They've been doing it since the, early 2000s. The earliest deals were for natural gas. And most recently, they're catching up to the CCA community. You had Anaheim, Turlock, and Modesto all within the last year or so transact with energy prepayment transactions. So this isn't just a CCA adopted sort of tool. It's also pretty widely adopted across the public power community throughout California, as well as the country. So if we flip to the next slide, as you put together, one of these transactions, there's a lot of folks involved besides your team. So you hire a municipal advisor with a fiduciary responsibility to you. That was us, which we appreciate. You'll hire a prepaid counsel. You'll hire, bond and tax counsel. We all need good lawyers to help us through the stack of paperwork that's required to complete this. Everybody kind of plays their role. You used a conduit issuer. This was the CCCFA. This was created by CCAs for the sole purpose of helping to facilitate the issuance of these prepayment transactions. Every CCA transaction that's been done has been done through the CCCFA. You need to hire a prepaid supplier. Last time around, that was Morgan Stanley. It's typically an investment bank that also does commodity business. There's a rather limited market for that, but a market that's really well known as well as very familiar to the CCA community. You saw the list of all the banks that have been used on the other transactions. And then notably, there's a couple other sort of miscellaneous roles, bank trustee services, as well as the bonds are rated. They've been rated by Moody's. It's not your rating. It is a rating essentially of the financial institution that's involved. But there is public disclosure out there and information about community power that is sent to investors. So we can flip to the next slide. This is, forgive me for the boxes and the arrows and the bubbles. This is a high level summary, sort of explanation of what the transaction looks like. And I like to sort of break it down into two parts. There's the left side of this, which deals with the energy and what's going on with the power. And then there's the right-hand side of this that deals with the dollars. So I'd like to start with the left side and the power. Again, what happens is you essentially end up in a very similar, if not almost identical position from a power perspective that you start in. You have PPAs that you have already negotiated with counterparties. They sit on your books. You're taking energy, you're paying for the energy. You, on a very limited basis, you assign those to the bank counterparty who will commit to selling the same megawatts to the CCCFA. You will have a commitment to purchase those same power megawatts through the CCCFA. So the power starts with you, goes through the bank and the CCCFA and ends up back with you. Nothing is done to the energy. It needs to flow through the transaction in order to allow the dollars to flow, which is what creates the savings that you're enjoying. But they're not doing anything. So every megawatt that came off the project before comes to you the same way it did before. What has changed? I like to jump to the punchline. That is bubble 7. Instead of paying your PPA price before, call it $100, now you're only paying $90. So you've saved 10%, you've saved $10 on that. And the way that's done is the contractual commitment on the power side allows CCCFA to issue non-recourse tax-exempt bonds to raise proceeds to make a prepayment to the counterparty for that commitment of power. So what's notable about that is that those bonds are not the debt of San Diego Community Power. Your revenues are not pledged to repay that debt. That's why we consider it non-recourse. So you might be familiar with debt that your local cities or the county have, gone and put on the books for different projects. This and you're sort of obligated to repay it. That's not what this is. All you're paying for is the energy that you're receiving from the CCCFA, and you're paying for it at a discount. And that's exactly what you're doing today. If you receive energy from the projects, you pay for it. So the same thing, you pay for energy received, you don't pay for energy you don't get, and you're not paying for the debt. But what you are doing is you're enjoying the benefit of this, sort of all these boxes and arrows, which is the reduction in the PPA price that you were paying on the energy. We can flip to the next slide. My final slide. We like to talk about the risks in the transactions that we do with our clients. Very important. It starts with the take and pay structure, which again does not obligate you on the debt. There are a multitude of risks that are inherent in renewable energy. You get too much, you don't get enough, your counterparties have issues. If you can think of what the issue was, we've structured provisions within the contracts of this transaction that help to mitigate that so that it doesn't become a problem for the structure. Again, the debt in this, you're not obligated on the debt. If there's a problem, the debt will be repaid through termination payments that have nothing to do with you. So notably, you can actually see that in the rating agency treatment of prepaid debt. So for CCAs that are publicly rated or some of the municipal utilities that have ratings, they have a note in the rating report that there is this transaction out there, but it is not treated as debt of the utility per the rating agency. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can see it in some of the rating agency reports themselves. So we really think that the biggest potential issue is if the transaction terminates, termination payment from the counterparty is due to bondholders. What happens to San Diego is you end up losing your savings, but you go back to square one. The contracts that you assigned, those come back to you. You now face your counterparties just the way you did before. You've spent a ton of staff time to do this, but you've not otherwise lost anything. You're paying your PPA price just the way you were paying before. So, obviously, we're supportive of these. You've done one of these to great success. You have the ability to potentially do others. So, Dr. Washington and the team have asked us to sort of go through this deck just to give you a quick overview of how these work. So, with that, Dr. Washington, I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
Thank you again, Mr. Berwinger. That'll conclude this presentation for receive and file. Madam Chair, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to public comment if there's any.
There are none, Madam Chair.
Being none, turn it over to the board members to see if they have any comments or questions. Being none. Well, thank you. Thank you for your due diligence, Mr. Berwinger, and thank you, Dr. Washington. This is a smart move, and I think that, it'll help us in the long run. So this is a receive and file. We're gonna then move on to item number 12, adopt resolution number 2025-02 to approve a designation of presiding officer policy. Our general counsel, Vera Tiagi, will present the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, my name is Vera Tiagi, and I'm the General Counsel of Community Power. This item is asking the board to adopt resolution number 2025-02 to approve a designation of presiding officer policy. The purpose of this policy is to identify a process for establishing who shall preside over a community power board meeting or a committee meeting in the absence of the chair and the vice chair. And what it does is it lays out basically like a two-step process. The priority would be for the member with the longest tenure to serve as the presiding officer. And in some cases, we cannot identify who the member with the longest tenure is. This happens most often with our CAC, where the members are appointed basically in thirds. So they join in tranches, and it's not clear always who has the longest tenure. So in situations like that, we have an alternative approach, which is that the chair, if the chair is available, will appoint a presiding officer. And if there is no seated chair, or the chair is otherwise unable to designate a presiding officer, and this was a situation that happened with the FRMC this past January, then the chief executive officer or their designee will select a presiding officer. That's a short and sweet presentation. And with that, I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Seeing no requests to speak from the public. Correct. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none. So I will now entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 2025-02 to approve a designation of presiding officer policy to set a process for identifying the director to preside over a community power board of directors meeting in the absence of the board chair or vice chair, and the committee member to preside over a community power committee meeting in the absence of the committee chair or vice chair, if the committee has appointed a vice chair. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
Moved by Director Yamani, second by Director Nzunza. Marty, please call the roll.
Director Eula Rivera, Director Insunza,
Yes.
Director San Antonio,
Aye.
Director Suzuki,
Yes.
Director Yamani,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lassen Reimer, Chair Aguirre.
Aye.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Great. So next, we're going to move on to item number 13. This item is to appoint a new member to the Finance and Risk Management Committee, FRMC. As a result of my stepping down off the committee, we will first go to public comment, and then we will take nominations and a motion.
There are
Any
no public comments, Madam Chair.
Okay, so do we have any nominations for appointing a FRMC member?
Madam Chair,
Oh, we have the vice chair recognized right now.
I was just gonna nominate,
Okay. We have a nomination for Director Inzunza, which I was going to do as well. Director
second that,
Yamani.
Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second to appoint Director Michael Inzunza to the FRMC. Mari, can you please call the roll?
Director Eloy Rivera, Director Insunza,
Yes.
Director San Antonio,
Aye.
Director Suzuki,
Yes.
Director Yamani,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lassen Reimer,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you, Mari. Next, we're going to move on to item number 14, amendment of the FY 2024-25 operating budget, the FY 2024-25 capital budget, and the FY 2025-29 capital investment plan. Dr. Eric Washington, CFO Treasurer, and Tim Manglicott, Director of Finance, will present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, good evening, directors. We are bringing before the board request for an approval for the amended fiscal year 24-25 operating budget, fiscal year 24-25 capital budget, and fiscal year 25 through 29 capital investment plan, which covers multiple fiscal reporting cycles. I'm Dr. Eric Washington, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer of San Diego Community Power. I'll be co-presenting this item with our Director of Finance, Tim Manglicott. I'll yield to Tim for an introduction and presentation of this item. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Eric. Good evening, Chair Gary, Vice Chair Lassen Reimer, Board of Directors. My name is Timothy Manglicott, Director of Finance. I have the pleasure today of presenting the budget amendment. And before I start, I do want to take a quick moment just to thank staff and most notably the finance team, who've been really good stewards of the budget and did put a lot of work into this budget amendment. If you go to the next slide. So the board back in July 2022 adopted a budget policy that kind of defined the parameters for how we manage the budget. The two things in particular that we wanted to highlight are that the board did in this policy adopt a policy that calls for a balanced budget. But then more so than that, the board also adopted kind of a mid-year budget amendment where every February we would look at the budget and kind of in alignment with rate setting. So rate setting typically occurs in January, kind of in lockstep with SDG and these rate setting cycle. And kind of different than your member jurisdictions. When we do our rate setting in January, we then come back to the board typically to see if we need a mid-year budget amendment to kind of amend for whatever we set in rates. And I think for most jurisdictions, for cities and counties, when you adopt your budgets in June in a typical fiscal year, then that's when you adopt your fines, fees, and whatever else kind of revenue. Then for community power, it's a little bit different since we follow SDG needs rate setting cycle and come back with this mid-year budget amendment. So that's kind of why the board adopted that budget policy back in July 2022 with this February date. If you go to the next slide. So internally within SDCP or community power, there are some internal financial principles that we practice and kind of hold steady as a team. The two that I'll highlight are reserves, which were a key theme in the rate setting kind of a few weeks ago when the board set the rates to try to get to 180 days cash on hand. And then the other thing is just fiscal responsibility. You'll notice with this budget that we took a really close look at the budget just to see what we could cut, see places where we could be efficient, and just be good stewards of ratepayer funds. And if you go to the next slide. So kind of the resulting operating budget. So at the top, you will see what the board adopted back in June of 2024, kind of the appropriations for revenue, expense, and the resulting net position, which translates to reserves. And then that bottom row in blue represents what we're proposing for the operating budget amendment. So if you go to the next slide, we're essentially proposing on the operating side is an increased appropriation of $43.3 million in revenue, again, which is in alignment with what the board adopted back in February 7, 2025. We're also proposing a $43.2 million increase in expenses, which is primarily due to the cost of energy increasing, as the board was briefed on during the last board meeting on February 7, but most notably increases to resource adequacy and increases to renewable costs were the primary drivers of that increase in expenses. But all that's to say, we do consider this to be kind of a net zero budget. Net income is only increasing by $0.2 million, and so it was a pretty concerted effort to try to get this budget to a net zero increase of just $0.2 million in that position. And if you go to the next slide. So this is going to be your classic eye chart. I'll walk you through this. This is the classic finance chart that every budget person probably in the city presents. So kind of on the revenue side, what we mentioned earlier, there's an increase to revenue, again, in lockstep with what the board adopted in the rate setting cycle back in February 7. We also mentioned just right now that cost of energy is also increasing, again, mostly due to resource adequacy and renewable price increases. But the kind of one thing that I did want to point out is the non-energy costs. So the non-energy costs are, it's a line that we do consider in the direct control of community power. These are things like professional services, personnel costs, general administrative costs. And you'll notice a $3.0 million reduction kind of in that non-energy line. And a lot of that has to do with community power managing our finances really closely. So then you'll see in the next slide that there are reductions to professional services. Personnel is kind of flat. There's large reductions in general administrative costs. And a lot of that has to do with us looking at every single line item, seeing places where we could be efficient, looking at where we could transition professional services to in-house staff, or even looking at places where professional services is more cost effective. And kind of managing the budget really closely just to make sure that, again, we're good stewards of ratepayer funds. And then we could bring kind of that reduction where we can. And then I guess the one thing I'll point out is the budget also this amended budget also calls for a transfer of $3 million from the operating budget into the capital budget and CIP. And that $3 million transfer is intended to fund the solar battery storage program, which the board has seen prior presentations on. But the brief kind of summary for the solar battery storage program and why we want to invest an additional $3 million is it's a very effective program for the agency. I think Chair Vasilakis from the CAC mentioned earlier that solar battery storage program has led to re-enrollments in community power. It also is leading to kind of reduce resource adequacy costs because we're able to take that battery storage energy that's generated during the day and then discharge it during the peak hours. So there's a lot of good savings for that program, which is why we're proposing an investment of $3 million into that solar battery storage program. If you go to the next slide. So kind of just to close this out here, we also do like to compare ourselves to the other CCAs in California, but most notably at the top row there is Clean Power Alliance. Clean Power Alliance is a CCA that's located in Los Angeles. They do have a very similar load profile to community power and do have a similar number of accounts. The two things I'll point out with that are that if you just look at the non-energy costs for Clean Power Alliance versus community power, we are significantly lower on the non-energy side. And so community power is thoughtfully trying to scale the agency. And that's a big reason why we are still lower than Clean Power Alliance. They also started a few years before Community Power Day, which is a big reason why their costs are a little bit higher. They're a little bit more of a mature CCA than Community Power is. But then the last that I'll point out is just that that ratio of energy to just net revenue. Clean Power Alliance does have a little bit lower ratio compared to Community Power. One of the things that Dr. Eric Washington and Mike Beringer presented earlier was kind of the affordability play in terms of the clean prepayment transactions. So Clean Power Alliance has issued 5 clean prepayment transactions in the past. Community Power has only done 1. And so that's a big reason why I think Clean Power Alliance does have a lower energy cost compared to Community Power. Because if we did do similarly 5 clean prepayment transactions to CPA, then we would have a similar ratio to Clean Power Alliance with all the savings that we would generate from those prepayment transactions. So that's a big affordability play that we're hoping to make in this upcoming year. And then you'll see that a lot more during the actual budget development process in the upcoming year. And with that, Dr. Eric Washington, I will turn over to you for closing comments.
Thank you, Tim, so much for that presentation. Again, thank you to the efforts of the finance team and the the rigorous process that the entire organization took in terms of taking a hard look at the budget and getting us to this point. I also wanted to just make a comment with regard to this item was presented at the Finance and Risk Management Committee, where we received a recommendation from the Finance and Risk Management Committee to advance this item to the board for consideration for approval. So that'll conclude the presentation, Madam Chair. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. And we're going to go to public comment now.
We have none, Madam Chair.
All right, now we're going to move on to board member comments or questions.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, Director Yaman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to echo to my colleagues that this was presented to us at the finance and risk management level, and we had firsthand seen how diligent our staff had really looked into each item and looking at streamlining or looking at cost savings that we can that our organization will have. They've also presented that with this budget, they're looking at creating more jobs for our organization, being more diligent in our CIPs and other items in the accounting items that Director Tim had and his team had, with the leadership of course, Dr. Washington, had looked into. That's why I had recommended for approval to, for the board to, to approve as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's been done diligently, and it's a budget that if there are any other changes, that it's a living document that Dr. Washington and his team can always revisit and relook and see how we can, how we can move forward with it.
Well said, Director Yamani, and I appreciate serving with you on the FRMC and appreciate the finance team, Tim and Dr. Washington, for your due diligence. You said it very well. We have a responsibility to our ratepayers, and there's some things that are under our control and some things that are not, especially the rate setting and our setting of our competitors. But where it counts, you made the changes, you did the work, you shook the trees. So I really appreciate all the work that went into this. And with that, I will move to amend the FY 2024-25 operating budget, the FY 24-25 capital budget, and the FY 2025-29 capital investment plan. Is there a second?
Second that, Madam Chair.
Okay, seconded by Director Yamani. Mari, please call the roll.
Director Elo Rivera. Director Insunza.
Aye.
Director San Antonio.
Aye.
Director Suzuki.
Aye.
Director Yamani.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lassen-Remer. Aye. Chair Aguirre.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. We'll now go on to item number 15, approve amended and restated an energy storage service agreement with USMOD Project I LLC. Kenny Key, Director of Power Contracts, will present the item.
Thank you, Chair Gary and Board. Appreciate your time and attention tonight. So I have two items, so hopefully you won't get too sick of me tonight. So the first one here, you have next slide. This is a project that those of you who were on the board last year, we approved this project in a slightly different form. So I'm bringing you tonight a proposed amended and restated version of the contract. This now, the one that we currently have under contract is a 200 megawatt 4-hour battery project. We are proposing to amend this to an 8-hour battery, and I'll give you some reasons in a second here for that. This project is located in Kern County, so a little bit north of us, and is going to be developed by IPA. The COD is in 2028. Next slide, please. So a little bit of talk on the safety of the developer and the technology that they're working with. So IPA has a long history of developing these types of projects in California. They employ a multi-layered approach to partner with the local permitting agencies, the local planning agencies and local fire departments to really make sure there's a robust safety plan around all of their projects, including this one. There's all the latest sensors and detection systems installed on this. Currently, any project in the state that's getting permitted now needs to have some kind of 24/7 monitoring on them. They also require and offer direct training to the local agencies and fire departments. And I'll specifically note for this one, Kern County has been noted for a while now to be one of the more rigorous community districts for standalone storage projects. And so they meet all of the current codes of the state, as well as the more aggressive ones, I'd say, in Kern County. Next slide, please. So this project, again, it's a standalone storage energy service storage agreement. This is a full toll agreement, which means we get the ability to charge and discharge the battery and take advantage of the energy arbitrage. We get all the ancillary services and as well as the resource adequacy benefits. This one specifically, we had contracted previously last year because of its awarding of deliverability by CAISO, and that allows us to count the resource adequacy from the project towards our portfolio. We are contracting here for a 20-year term. The guaranteed COD date is June 1st of 28. That is important because we have midterm reliability procurement requirements. One of those is related to long duration energy storage, which an 8-hour battery would comply with. It would have to be online by June of 28. So it fits perfectly within that timeline. Next slide, please. So I wanted to brief you guys a little bit on what we're amending in this proposal. So again, the original contract was 15 years. We're proposing an amendment to go to 20 years here. We do robust modeling on all of these projects, and typically from developers, they will offer slightly different and divergent pricing depending on the length of the contract. So we ran significant analysis of this in our advanced energy analytics software. And again, the net cash flow that looks out of both of these based upon the pricing discounts we get for contracting for 20 years versus 15 added a lot more value to the portfolio. It also adds a lot more certainty for it over the period of time as well as extended RA benefits. We are shifting this and proposing to shift this from a 4-hour to an 8-hour. Mostly to meet our midterm reliability requirements. For those of you who've been on the board for a little bit, we contracted a little over 2 years ago for another 8-hour battery project. That would have been sufficient to meet the requirements of contracting for long duration storage by June of this year. Unfortunately, that project has been delayed and will not be able to meet its 2028 timeline. So we need to have something else in our portfolio that was contracted by June of this year that was 8 hours or longer in duration. So this was a great solution for something that was in our portfolio already. I will note we didn't do this as a one-off, just, hey, developer, can you switch this to an 8-hour? We had hinted to them that we were looking for an additional 8-hour project. We had them submit this into our large all source request for proposals in Q4 of last year so that we could evaluate the pricing that they could offer to shift this 8-hour along with every other developer who could offer us a similar project with similar timelines. I'll note that through that robust RFP review process, this project scored higher than almost any other project. And so it would have been shortlisted regardless. It was great for us. It was a very simplified contracting process to take and amend that. And so we were glad to see that. There's also some slight updates to the contract to account for some of the new slice of day resource adequacy requirements that were required for it. That wasn't contemplated in the original contract. That program just took place and started this year. So we had a lot of cleanup edits and things we did like that to help, again, protect the agency and our ratepayers. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background on IPA, who's the developer of this project. So again, they've been around for several years. They have several projects that are in early, mid, and late stage development within California, within the country, and then over 18 within California. So we are excited to work with them. They are a very large and well respected and backed developer. So we're very confident in their development schedules and timelines. Next slide, please. And just touching a little bit on this as far as the benefits for us, as I talked a little bit about this before, we have continued reliability and capacity targets that we need to hit. This is a fairly large standalone storage project that can help meet those goals. The pricing was very competitive. Again, we ran it against a very robust offering that came out of the all source RFP, and it scored in the top scores in that RFP. Again, the key consideration here is meeting the long duration midterm reliability requirement. Our requirement is roughly a little over 50 megawatts. This would clearly put us well above that and show our good intentions for that program. And again, there's a lot of savings to our ratepayers and customers of locking in projects like this for long duration. Next slide, please. And this is somewhat of a repetition of when this was originally approved, but I thought it'd be good to highlight again. All of these projects come with tremendous benefits to both us and to local communities. This will create over 110 construction jobs and 4 permanent jobs. They will work with contractors that will utilize project labor agreements to support the workers in the communities. It's in a rural area, really separated, no residential sites, no sensitive receptors. So it's kind of an ideal place for these really large scale standalone storage projects. And per the agreement that we already have with them, they're going to maintain their commitment to put $100,000 towards a community benefit fund that use, and that's specifically, those community benefit funds are specifically for our local ratepayers and local programs. So again, some money that we can filter and funnel to local SDCP interest. I think that's everything for me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Key. I'm going to ask if there's public comment. Seeing none.
None, Madam Chair.
We're going to turn it over then to board members for questions or comments.
Comment, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Director Yamani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this strengthened and lock us into a more stable relationship with our partners that provides the services to us. And also, I double check it with our CEO during my briefing that benefits are for our customers, although the project is in Kern County. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Yamani. Would you like to make the motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. The recommendation is to approve amended and restated energy storage service agreement with UseMod Project I LLC for a 200 megawatt 8-hour battery energy system storage facility with a 20-year term. There's been a motion by Director Yamani, seconded by Vice Chair Lawson Remer. Mari, please call the roll.
Director Elo Rivera.
Yes.
Director Insunza.
Yes.
Director San Antonio.
Aye.
Director Suzuki.
Aye.
Director Yamani. Vice Chair Lawson Remer.
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Yes.
Motion passes, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you so much. We're now going to move on to item 16, approve energy storage service agreement for the North Johnson Energy Center project. Kenny Key again will give the presentation.
Thank you back again. And again, appreciate the time and consideration. Next slide. So this one would be a new contract for our portfolio. This is with the North Johnson Energy Center standalone storage project. This is a 50 megawatt, 4-hour lithium ion battery. It's located in San Diego in El Cajon, as you can see on the map there. So again, this was one that we had put a letter of interest behind in the last CAISO deliverability proceedings. We were really excited to see a few of those projects that we had showed support for that were awarded deliverability. As some of you might know, that is becoming more and more of the constraint for these projects to be developed and for us to be able to count them for the resource adequacy benefits, which again drives a ton of the value for these projects for us. And it's really hard to work on financing and helping these if they don't get that. So we were excited that a few of the local projects to help meet our local wholesale procurement targets that you all helped us set were able to be awarded that in the last cycle. So we've been expediting once they got that, trying to work towards a contract with them. So next slide, please. And again, I wanted to summarize here some of the components of the technology and the safety measures. They have selected to work with Tesla. Tesla's Megapacks are the leading cutting edge technology for standalone storage. Most major projects, this is the technology they use. Again, kind of noted here, there's been over 10,000 installations of these over the last few years with no major incidents. They are designed with multiple safety features. They're purpose-built containers. If you can imagine shipping containers, like they're all modularized into multiple shipping containers, and they're set up such that if there's any issues within any container, that'll allow itself to handle itself within the container and essentially burn out and not be able to go impacting the other containers. And that's done purposely. Again, most of this is driven by those banks financing these types of projects. Again, if there's issues that can spread throughout a project, the whole thing's down versus just one container having an issue. There's cooling systems. Again, there is 24/7 monitoring of these. And a lot of advanced safety. And again, this project in particular has already been vetted by the local permitting agency and already has received its conditional use permit. So all of the design and the safety around it has been fully vetted by the local jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the developer. So again, they're pivoting. They've been in business for quite a long time, mostly in the natural gas space, and have a number of utility scale projects throughout California. They're very robust throughout the state and have a lot of CAISO experience and a lot of operational experience. They have in the last 10 years really been pivoting to standalone storage, and they originally got interested in this because they saw they were running a lot of natural gas peaking plants, which again only need to be called upon if there's an issue that CAISO deems there need to be more energy pulled onto the grid. They saw a real opportunity a few years ago to start putting standalone storage at or near those natural gas peaker plants to hopefully significantly reduce the amount of times those peaker plants have to be called upon and have to be run, and instead it can pull up on the battery first. And they've won a number of awards for these types of designs. Typically, it can reduce the call time on the natural gas facilities by about 90%. So it really got them interested, and they've been fortunate that they have a ton of project sites throughout the state that have these natural gas peaking plants, but have a ton of adjacent land or sufficient adjacent land for these standalone storage projects, which is ideal for interconnection because they're already connection lines with local utility and step-up transformers. Next slide, please. So here, again, similar to the contract I just talked about, this will be a full toll contract. So we will be able to take advantage of scheduling the facility, taking advantage of energy arbitrage, getting all the ancillary service benefits, and getting all the resource adequacy benefits. For this one, it's a 15-year term. That modeled better for this one for various reasons. And this is a near-term project. It's supposed to be in a line. So it's going to hit June 1 of next year, 2026. So in addition to that long duration mandate that we have under midterm reliability, there's also various procurement obligations we have every year. So this is going to help meet our 26 midterm reliability obligations. Next slide, please. So one of the main things we're excited about with this project is we have a fairly robust local wholesale standalone storage in addition to our local distributed targets that we need to hit. And I'd say San Diego is one of the more difficult places to see projects get approved and get developed. It's hard enough on the permitting side, let alone now there's a lot of restrictions on network upgrades and deliverability for these projects. So we kind of have to, by the time you get both those things together and you have this magical elixir with those projects, with both of those, we're really excited for that. And so we were able to support this in the CAISO process, and we're happy to see a few of the ones that we supported be awarded deliverability in the next few years. The pricing was very competitive. Again, we compared this to recent RFPs that we ran. And again, locking these prices in for a long-term contract really helps levelize those RA and synergy arb costs for our ratepayers over the long term. Next slide, please. And the benefits here, again, this is a real win for kind of local labor. Again, there's a lot, over 130 jobs for this, about 6, I think that will be jobs permanently after they've committed to a PLA for this. So again, a big win for local jobs and local labor. It's located in a disadvantaged community, which is another thing we tend to try to support, especially this one is located literally right next to one of those peak facilities. And so while it's not necessarily tied directly to the operations of that facility, because of the benefits it could have if it's called upon
for those peaking needs, it could really limit the amount of times that natural gas facility is called upon, which again, in locations like this, as historically these disadvantaged communities, they would put the natural gas facilities. There's again a lot of local health impacts from running those, and so the more we can help encourage infilling these storage projects in safe and constructive ways, we can reduce that and really help our local neighborhoods. And they've been really active with the community. This is not their only project in San Diego. You'll probably hear hopefully one or two more in the next few months coming to you guys with. But they're working on scholarship with local schools and really trying to encourage more STEM research and research into renewable energy technologies locally. Next slide, please. I think that might have been it. Yeah, so with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Key. We're going to go now to public comment. Seeing none,
We have none, Madam Chair.
we'll now turn it over to board members. If there's any comments or questions,
Through the chair.
go ahead.
Thank you. Because I had a very good briefing with our CEO with these 3 projects that another one's coming up. And this is our commitment to really fulfilling the services that we said we're going to provide our customers. And small projects like this really help the communities that we serve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments, Vice Chair?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask to confirm that we haven't heard any concerns about fire risk or anything of that nature with these specific projects.
Yeah, no, great question. No, I know that was like thoroughly vetted in the permitting process with this. Again, we didn't hear any concerns or local opposition during that period. Again, they're using the state-of-the-art battery storage technology that again is designed if there does happen to be any issues or thermal runaway type issues with the lithium-ion batteries. Again, that is really containerized, and they've done several studies on that even if that full container goes up and is fully inflamed, it really reflects in like the ambient emissions from that is minimal. And there's been several studies on that. I think that's really the main concern, right? You don't want, we're balancing and juggling. We have these local requirements, these local requirements. That's going to necessitate some of these storage ones being, relatively close to businesses, to residences and things like that. And the real concern is, first off, if something happens with that spread, I think the new technologies are all designed. One, they have to make sure that it cannot spread. And 2, like the fire departments have heavily put requirements on these to have water and capacity so that where that can be put out right away if something else does happen to happen. But then the secondary concern is, okay, fine, it won't spread, but what are the local health impacts if there's a fire and that can go to neighborhoods where there could be sensitive receptors? And there's been a plethora of studies now, especially on Tesla's units, where like that is just not shown to have any ambient health effects of any of the individual units.
Were they permitted by the local jurisdiction or through state process?
Through the city of Elko.
Through that, great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Any other?
Madam Chair, if I may, kind of a question about bigger picture question. I heard you reference that these projects are particularly difficult to do in the San Diego region. Are there headwinds that we should know about that are unique to San Diego that we could be taking back to our jurisdictions to help make it a little bit easier to create projects like this?
Yeah, that's, I don't know if I have enough time to fully answer that question.
Yeah, if you want to report back later,
I'll try to quickly give a few things there. I would say over the past, call it 9 to 12 months, as there has been some local issues with other technologies and much older technologies, I think there's been some concerns, especially in the like Escondido and those types of jurisdictions around the safety of these types of projects. And that has created a lot of uncertainty on the permitting front, right? There's kind of set parameters around what it takes to get for permits for these projects. And the more uncertainty around that, again, that's just going to be passed through either in delays or cost impacts or both to us. And so I think most of the developers that we're working with are focused on safety as well, right? They have real obligations and real desires to make sure their projects are good for the long term. And so to the sense, like they're fine with rigorous permitting requirements. They just want clarity on what those are, not have those shifting. So I think the more that those can be, they're always going to ask those to be expedited. I get there's reasons, like there's staffing concerns, there's multiple reasons with those local jurisdictions that makes it difficult to expedite those, especially when there's headwinds of potential public concern about these technologies. So I want them to do their due diligence. I think the timeline concerns are less the issue. It's more the changing of those requirements or the uncertainty in those requirements. So like the more certainty in that would be better. I really though think that that's a one big portion of this. It's really though for the local projects, the deliverability is becoming just a major issue. Even the newer projects that we're working with now, you know, they're being told by SDG and CAISO that they'll have deliverability in the 2032 to 2035 timeline. And so if they wanted to rush and develop a project and have it online for us in 27, 28, you know, roughly half of their revenue stream is coming from the resource adequacy side of this. And so if that is completely gone until 2035, they just can't justify the economics of doing that. So we're losing out on those types of projects kind of just coming into our area and building, because there's the delays in the network upgrades, which unfortunately is outside of all of our control, right? That's, you know, the more pressure we can put on SDG&E to expedite some of those timelines and work on those network upgrades and encourage that. Again, it's a problem throughout the state, but the more pressure we can put on our local utilities in control of that would be helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. Any other board comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you, Vice Chair, for that question. That was something I was concerned with as well. I know it's in the top of mind of many communities, the fires and what the potential impacts to public health those have. Very much appreciate seeing the local hires, the 130 clean energy jobs, and especially you know, moving away from gas-fired generation for communities of concern. So with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve energy storage service agreement with North Johnson Energy Center, LLC, for a 50 megawatt, 200 megawatt per hour, 4-hour battery energy storage facility with a 15-year term. Is there a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, we have a motion by Director Yamani, seconded by Director Nzunza. Mari, please call the roll.
Director Rivera, Director Insunza,
Yes.
Director San Antonio.
Aye.
Director Suzuki,
Aye.
Director Yamani,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lassen Remer,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Yes.
Motion carries, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to item number 17, approve energy storage services agreement portfolio with Lumenia Devco 5 LLC. Morgan Adams, Senior Local Development Manager, will present this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, directors of the board. I'm happy to be here this evening to present for your consideration a portfolio of 5 distributed battery energy projects with local developer Lumenia, for whom the board approved a portfolio of rooftop PV projects last month. Next slide. You can go ahead and advance. Thank you. So these battery projects would be located in the cities of San Diego, Chula Vista, and one in unincorporated county, each ranging in size from 3 megawatts to 6 megawatts. So in essence, very similar to the projects that Kenny just presented, just think a lot smaller, with a total portfolio aggregated capacity of 20.6 megawatts. These would all also be 4-hour battery systems. All of these projects would be located on secured commercial and industrial parcels. Just to give you a sense of their respective locations, you can kind of see the red pins on this map here. Just to describe them very briefly, the northernmost site is in unincorporated county, barely near 4S and Rancho Bernardo. And then there's another site in the southern part of Chula Vista, and then 3 sites kind of clustered relatively close together down in Otay Mesa, in the city of San Diego. Next slide, please. Again, similar to what you heard from Kenny earlier, these projects will all source containerized solutions adhering to the latest and greatest standards by UL and the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. A couple highlights, just to note, these projects include liquid cooling systems. The battery chemistry is lithium iron phosphate, which is inherently safer than other lithium ion chemistries, just reducing the risk of that sort of thermal runaway worst case. And then also the containers will comply with California Fire Code with regards to spacing between containers. The projects will all be located in secure facilities. They will develop emergency response plans in coordination with local fire officials and jurisdictions. And the projects will focus on early detection to ensure safe operation. Projects will have 24/7 monitoring via sensors with regular on-site inspections. Luminia's commitment to safety really extends through the project lifecycle, from how sites are selected and designed to how they're delivered, constructed, and ultimately decommissioned at end of life. Next slide, please. Just a brief overview of Luminia, who we introduced last month when the board approved a portfolio of rooftop solar projects in the county. Luminia is headquartered in San Diego since their formation in 2019, and they boast 15 local professionals employed from their San Diego office. Their focus is exactly on this type and scale of project, with over 50 megawatts of projects in operation and development throughout California and New England, where community solar market's pretty active. Next slide, please. Also, very similar to the project that Kenny just introduced, these are for a full toll agreement with resource adequacy benefits over 20 years at a fixed price, with commercial operation expected in March of 2027. I'll note that Community Power would receive damages for failure to meet guaranteed commercial operation date and other performance parameters. And also wanted to note that similar to the PPA portfolio, the rooftop portfolio that was approved by the board last month, in addition to the individual agreements per site, there will also be a framework agreement that manages the sites at a portfolio level, and that contemplates the means to swap sites if and as needed, subject to our approval, of course, within the first year of development. So not to exceed the overall portfolio cap of 20.6 megawatts. Next slide, please. Community Power staff is very supportive and recommends approval of these agreements because largely of their contribution towards meeting our local and infill capacity goals, as well as providing the agency with remarkable economic value and cost certainty over the term of the agreements. Pricing for these local storage projects is competitive with other offerings that we've seen, including those that are larger and not local. Slide, please. So finally, in terms of workforce development and community benefits, these projects they are expected to contribute over $2.5 million in local labor wages and salaries, along with commitments to use local labor, prevailing wage, and to hire from San Diego-based apprenticeship programs. Just as an example, all sanitation, equipment rental, and waste services will be provided by local companies, and Luminia will work diligently with local CBOs to make sure that RFPs are posted such that local companies are made aware of subcontracting and supply opportunities. And then finally, up to an estimated $2.9 million in property tax revenue is expected to come in from these projects as well. I think that concludes my slides. I appreciate the board's time and consideration.
Thank you. Next, we're gonna go to public comment.
There are
Any
none,
public comment? Great. I'm gonna turn it over to board members if they have any comments or questions. Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to now entertain a motion to approve energy storage services agreements and a framework agreement in substantially final forms for a local RFO portfolio with Lumenia California DevCo 5 LLC for up to 20.6 megawatts of 4-hour duration battery energy storage systems for 20 years and authorize the chief executive officer to execute the agreements. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mari, please call the roll.
Director Eula Rivera, Director Insunza,
Yes.
Director San Antonio, Director Suzuki. Aye. Director Yamani,
Aye.
Vice Chair Lassen Remer,
Aye.
Chair Aguirre.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We will now go to item 18. I would like to recommend that we continue this item. I know our CEO Burns is remote, unless you're prepared to give that presentation.
I can do it.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, we're good? Okay. So CEO Karen Burns will present the item.
Yes. Good evening, board members. Hopefully everyone can hear me. All right.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you. And for those who might be joining us for the first time, my name is Karen Burns and I'm the CEO of San Diego Community Power. Tonight, I'm going to present our proposed goals for the fiscal year 2026 to 2028 3-year strategic planning period. Next slide, please. All right, I will briefly discuss what is not changing. I will outline our new and evolved strategic goals for the upcoming 3-year planning period, and then I'll open it up for discussion. As a brief background, this planning process started in September of 2024, wherein we identified our organization-wide risks, challenges, and opportunities, built our 3-year outlook by department, and then participated in several strategic planning meetings with our staff, with our leadership team, and with our executive team. We have also discussed these goals with members of the CAC in small group sessions and are now bringing this set of goals to you for the board's review. Next slide, please. So what is not changing? Our mission. This is our North Star. This guides our activities every day, and it serves us extremely well. Next slide, please. This is our vision. We are chipping away at this as we reach our goals and become more well-known as a trusted, accomplished expert in our field. So this too is not changing. Next slide, please. Our values, the gist of SDCP, the how of how SDCP and how we go about meeting our goals. This is as important to us as achieving them. And so our values, likewise, are not changing. Next slide. We have accomplished a lot over the past 3 years from our first strategic plan, including many of our original goals. And so we decided it was time to revisit our plan and focus on growth over the next 3 years. As mentioned previously, the key themes guiding our goals over this distinct planning period are fiscal sustainability, customer affordability, infrastructure, and people. Next slide. And again. Next slide. Great. As you heard earlier this evening, there is an opportunity to generate substantial savings on our energy costs through the prepay financial transaction process. And thus we aim to execute at least 6 of these transactions over this period for annual savings of roughly $30 million. As our power purchase agreements come online and our costs continue to stabilize, we hope to secure and publish a credit rating by the end of 2027. And to do that, we need to build and sustain our reserves to at least 180 days cash on hand. And on top of that, we'd like to build a rate stabilization reserve to help mitigate power cost fluctuations. Lastly, as in any organization defined by a continuous improvement culture, we want to enhance and build policies that meet or exceed best practices in contracting, risk management, and procurement. Next slide. Now we'll discuss our goals for the power procurement team. This top goal has not changed. We aim to get 100% clean and renewable power by 2035 or sooner, with 2 interim targets of reaching 75% by 2027 and 85% by 2030. We want to support a total of 1 gigawatt of clean energy and clean energy capacity by 2035, that is local, of which 300 megawatts will be comprised of small scale and medium scale distributed energy resources. And we always need to ensure we're managing the portfolio to minimize risk and customer costs while also complying with resource adequacy, renewable portfolio standards, and all other regulations required of us by the CPUC and the CEC. Last but not least, we have the goal to create high-quality local jobs in the renewable energy sector through our power purchasing activities. Next slide, please. Our community programs team is tasked with implementing energy projects and programs that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reinvest in our communities. One of the big ways we plan to achieve this goal is by supporting the development of 150 megawatts of local capacity from distributed energy resources and our virtual power plant by 2035. This necessarily involves expanding our investment in the solar battery savings program, as well as expanding the customer types eligible for the program. Another substantial goal of the programs team over the next 3 years is to launch 10 programs of the Regional Energy Network over the next 12 to 18 months by the end of the next year. And we also want to track the impact of our efforts, pivot when necessary, and make sure we are reaching the goals and customers we envisioned we would when the programs were first designed. Because of that, we plan to develop a comprehensive evaluation framework set to ensure we are meeting customer needs as intended. Lastly, where possible and when in alignment with our strategic goals, we seek to identify and increase external funding opportunities to bring to the region. Next slide. Everything our legislative and regulatory policy team does is guided by our regulatory and legislative policy platform. Every year, we review that with this board to make updates and changes as needed. We should be bringing this to you in April of this year. Our goals broadly are to educate and inform our policymakers, to be a trusted expert resource for them, to sponsor legislation and regulations that support community power and the community choice aggregator community, to oppose or ask for changes to legislation and regulations that are detrimental to community power and the community choice aggregator community, and to continue to be active in our trade association, the CalCCA, as well as other associations that have shared goals. And lastly, where possible and in line with our strategic goals, to seek external sources of funding to bring to San Diego to advance our efforts. Next slide. Public affairs. Our public affairs team supports all aspects of our organization, as well as our elected officials and member agencies. Their goals are to establish community power as a trusted agency with our local governments, member agencies within our communities, and with our customers especially. Part of this work involves building out a power network of nonprofit organizations and community-based organizations and supporting them to build community, enhance awareness, and reinvest in the communities we serve. Next, we want to focus on customer education, helping folks to better control their energy use, optimize it, and thereby save money on their bills. And as we are launching several regional energy network programs, as well as our own, we want to make sure we are deploying effective marketing and communication plans to encourage folks across the county to take advantage of the programs we are offering. Next slide. Our customer operations team is focused on ensuring high customer retention and satisfaction for all our customers. They are also the engine behind our rate setting and design process and have a goal to evolve our rate strategy to ensure competitiveness, affordability, and fiscal sustainability. We have a 95% customer retention rate, and we would like to keep it that way, so customer operations will be developing engagement and retention strategies. Bills are confusing, and so we have a goal to work more closely with SDG&E to resolve these issues that support and enhance a single billing system. We want to explore and identify ways we can provide even better customer service, and we also want to work with our customers to help them reduce their energy bills, take advantage of rate reduction plans they may be eligible for, and help reduce our overall outstanding arrearages. Next slide. Human Resources has the responsibility to foster a workplace culture that encourages innovation, inclusion, transparency, and integrity. Our goal over this planning period is to evolve into a learning organization with a growth mindset and a focus on continuous professional development. We aim to build a learning culture in which our employees are trained in best practice management skills, conflict resolution, safety, and emergency preparedness. We want to continue to hire top talent and retain the folks that we do hire. Therefore, another goal we have is to ensure high levels of employee satisfaction and engagement. We have another goal to develop a robust and regularly recurring internship program that offers local college and community college students opportunities to gain experience in the clean energy industry. And lastly, like any good management team, we need to make sure we are grooming the next generation of leaders within our organization. And thus we'll begin to develop a succession plan. Next slide, please. All right, so what happens next? After tonight's discussion, we will take and bring back any feedback we receive from you to the larger team, review and create a final draft of the strategic plan goal set. On March 13th, we'll present to the CAC and seek their recommendation for approval to the board of directors. And on March 27th, at our next regular board meeting, we will present the final slide deck for approval. After the plan is approved, between April and June, we then get busy developing the annual staffing and resource plan, department goal setting, organizational budget, and individual work plans for the fiscal 2026 year. Thank you. That is the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take comments or questions.
Thank you, CEO Burns, very much for that thorough presentation. We're going to go to public comment first, seeing if there's any.
We have none, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We're going to now turn it over to Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thank you to the team. Every time you bring me these items and this item in particular, I just am so impressed by the creativity and the focus. I know when the board adopted these goals, they seemed impossible and ambitious, and I am very grateful for the creativity that the team has leveraged in tackling them. I think we are on track despite the ambitiousness of what we've set out to do. And I really appreciate also the leveraging and the looking for external funding for these investments. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Other director comments or questions?
Madam Chair.
Director Yamani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am, I mean, you can really feel the excitement of our CEO while she's presenting this to us. And I'm also excited for her and her team to execute and implement all these items that she had presented to us. I am thankful for her leadership and also her diligence in gathering or recruiting her team with the same commitment and passion in making sure that this organization succeed. Thank you, Ms. Karen Burns, our CEO. I am excited to see how for your execution of this with your team. We're only as strong as you are, and I carry you, to lead us to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you, council member and board member. It's a team effort. I wouldn't be here but for this amazing team that we have.
Well said, Director Yamani. And I want to echo what's been said. I just want to thank not just you, Karen, but the entire team. I know everybody put a lot of work and thought into this, not just the previous board members, but also the CAC. And obviously, under your leadership, Karen, we have a phenomenal team that I know is working very diligently to make sure that we steward our ratepayers, funding, and that we also provide excellent quality service. The internal culture of our organization is one that is very positive, and I know that's because of the work that you've done, Karen. So thank you for that. As we roll out the REN, as we look forward to what's coming out as far as legislation, not just from the state and the federal government, I am also very grateful to our legislative team, who is very proactive, keeping an eye on what's coming down the line. But without a plan, we would be nothing. And I'm very proud of the agency we have become today. So thank you for all of your work. And thank you, Dr. Washington, and the rest of the team for everything that you do. So this is a receive and file only. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next, I'm going to bounce it back to you, Karen, for your CEO's report.
Okay, great. All right. So this week I had the opportunity to provide an update on community power to the San Diego City Council. and we're planning to visit each of our member agencies over the next few months to provide updates on Community Power's rates, rate products, programs, and procurement efforts. So if there's still a TBD there, please help us get on your calendars. Thank you for support as we work to schedule these member updates. I'll be in National City next week and look forward to seeing you all in your official chambers soon. Next slide, please. So thank you also for sharing the customer feedback survey with your constituents. This critical survey will allow our communities to share what matters most to them when it comes to their energy. The survey remains open, and we greatly appreciate your continued help spreading the word and ensuring it reaches customers throughout our member agencies. If you have questions about this, please reach out to us and we'll reshare the information. And lastly, as always, the Community Power team has been out and about in our local communities. This past weekend, we were at the Home Electrification Fair in Encinitas. And this coming Saturday, you'll find us at Petco Park, celebrating with thousands of students and families at the 2025 Festival of Science and Engineering. Thank you.
That sounds great. Any director comments? Any announcements, anything? Seeing none? Okay, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I appreciate everybody's participation. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Yamani.
Thank you.